Let's begin looking at Chapter 28. In this chapter, we want to look at the difference between induced versus autonomous expenditures, demonstrate how the level of income is graphically determined using the multiplier model. So we'll introduce this idea of the expenditure multiplier. Use the multiplier equation to determine equilibrium income. Explain how multiplier process amplifies shifts in autonomous consumption. And demonstrate how fiscal policy can eliminate recessionary and inflationary gaps. And discuss 6 reasons why the multiplier model might be misleading. So the multiplier model really goes back to an economist by the name of John Maynard Keynes. And it comes out of basically macroeconomics response to the Great Depression. And when we look at the Great Depression, we saw some issues that classical economics just could not take care of. And those issues had to do with this idea that once you have an initial impact, you may have more impact after that, that there may be a dynamic response within the macroeconomy to these different shocks that happened. We've talked about that a little bit. In this chapter, we're really going to develop that model to its fullest. So the multiplier model is a model that emphasizes the economic fluctuations in aggregate demand rather than price level and output. For small, moderate fluctuations in aggregate demand, most economists believe that the aggregate supply aggregate demand model provides a better sense of how macroeconomics operates. But for large fluctuations, we can see these multiplier effects happen. All right, to get started with the multiplier model, we need to define something called the aggregate production curve. We're going to use this a little bit later in a couple later sections when we talk about creating something called the Keynesian cross. But this really outlines equilibrium in the economy. All the points along this, what we call aggregate production curve, are points where real production equals real income. And where we get that is essentially this national income accounting identity that says production equals income. For everything produced, we're going to sell that. When we sell that, that becomes income to the person who's producing it. So this production creates an equal amount of income. You can say, well, what about production that doesn't create income? Say I make something that I can't sell. Well, then the market value of that is 0, and we would not consider that a part of real production. But you say, well, wait a minute, what about stuff that we will sell but we haven't sold yet? Well, that goes into an account called inventory. So a lot of these details that go into the national income accounting we would cover and talk about more thoroughly in intermediate macro. For now, we're going to leave it at, remember that we have this 45-degree line, or I really like to just call this a line going through the origin, so it goes through 0, 0, that has a slope of 1. All right, it's the equilibrium levels of production, or we can call this aggregate production curve. And we're going to use that in a few moments to talk about national income and develop the multiplier model.